Another quote here. The idea that all other things being equal, individuals will forego a better opportunity for a worse one is absurd.
Sure.
With that being said, let me pause that idea because I also talk to a lot of men who, we have to qualify this. They are married to a woman who is objectively, in the eyes of everyone else around them, everyone says, really, her? Um, she's got a lot of issues, a lot of childhood chaos and drama and mental and emotional issues and so forth, borderline this and that and everything else. And sure enough, the relationship blows up in his face because he discovered that she was having an affair with drug addict, felon, somebody that's really low on the totem pole as far as the mating game is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And he is shocked by this because everything has told him over the years that women only, go up in the ranks as far as men are concerned. She dropped you because this guy's obviously a better deal. Let me go get the better deal and the better deal. So when she dropped me for a homeless drug addict, this makes no sense. And I say, well, you're looking at it the wrong way. Obviously, if she was a very troubled individual, this was a lateral move for her. She's going to more her kind. She's always been this way. You've been blind to this for so many years as you've been drunk in love with this woman and providing for her for so many years. So I could see where somebody may read something the idea that individuals will forego a better opportunity for a worse one is absurd. Sometimes it happens.
I don't know. Maybe we need to get into the psychology of that person's perception. So
there you go.
There's a couple of things I would say to this. So first of all, while it might be true that you know some guys who are with, let's say, objectively questionable women, it might also be true that there's something objectively questionable about those men. The fact of the matter is that secure, confident men don't end up in those sorts of relationships. They might meet those women,
Bingo.
but they don't stay with them because they don't tolerate
Bingo.
the treatment that they're receiving. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing when women complain about like being involved with narcissists. It's like, yeah, there's some narcissistic men out there. It's true. But like, what left you vulnerable to a narcissist? Because a healthy, secure woman would have sniffed that out in the first few weeks and said, this doesn't feel right. I'm out of here. So what was it about you that left you vulnerable to that particular seductive trap? And that's where you're not secure, and that's where you're not stable, and that's where you're not healed. So these are co-created situations. It's not like successful, awesome dudes end up with train wrecks of women. Generally, like on the surface, they could be rich, they could even be famous, but internally, they haven't yet developed a robust sense of self and authentic confidence. So that's one thing that I would say. Mm-hmm. The second thing I would say is that value is not objective. That's something that I say over and over again in that book. Value only exists in the mind of the beholder. And it's the cat who decides what milk is good. That's a metaphor I use often on the channel. You might think you're putting out the most wholesome, rich cream for the neighborhood cat, but if that cat turns its nose up and goes over there, the cat is deciding that that milk is better. You can't just decide for the cat. That's one of the issues here. So if we put ourselves in that situation, it might be analogous to this, where same thing in the professional arena is that people will choose their overall best option. Now, if you're used to choosing jobs based on their income, you might be flabbergasted when somebody chose a job for a third of the income they could be making somewhere else. You would think that person is just crazy. That person just doesn't understand economics or whatever. No, it's that person doesn't understand the perception of value, because there absolutely will be other components to that job that in that perceiver's mind are more valuable than the additional money that they would earn at that other opportunity. This could mean that it's a lower stress environment. It can mean that they're allowed to work from home, or it's a very short commute, or they're more flexible with the hours. All of those things might actually be more valuable than making an additional quantum of money. Do you see? And because they're perceived by that individual as being more valuable, he or she will make that decision. And if you're looking at that decision and thinking, what was this person thinking? You haven't understood it yet, because people generally make sense. Unless they truly are psychotic, which most people aren't, they're actually making rational decisions. And what I've discovered as a therapist, because I talk to all kinds of people, from all walks of life, and sometimes people present and they're really baffling. It's like, I don't quite understand why they would think that, or why would they choose to do this? And then you hear more of their story and it's like, oh yeah, Now it makes sense. So if you're baffled by why people choose the way they do, you don't know enough yet. But once you know enough about how they perceive value, how their value algorithm was trained given their childhood experiences, which is something I go into in the book, then their decisions make absolute clarity. They're completely rational.
Mm-hmm. From their
They
perspective,
may not
it
be in
makes
their best
absolute sense to them.
interests, but they're completely rational given
Mm-hmm.
their subjectivity, their perception of value. That's my
Yeah,
counter argument.
in that example of the wife who runs off with the objectively, felon, drug addict, whatever, if you really sat her down and asked why, he made me feel a certain way that I haven't felt in years with
Bingo.
husband.
And what that woman is basically saying is that feeling, which let's just pull this apart a little bit, because sometimes people can be married for 10, 15 years. They're now in their 40s. The enthusiasm, the excitement, the limerence have faded in the relationship. Maybe the sex is going, and they're really honestly looking into the future and saying, is this going to be the rest of my life? Am I never going to have sex again? Am I never going to feel alive again? Am I never going to feel that kind of excitement of touch and presence and connection? And that's hard for a lot of people to face. I mean, think about all the twists and turns that people do as they're older to maintain some vestiges of their youth and that vitality. They will spend tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to feel young again. So let's not diminish or minimize the value of that feeling of being alive, of feeling desired, of surrendering to that kind of exuberant connection can be extremely valuable to certain people, especially if those elements are missing in their marriage or their primary relationship.
And for a lot of people stuck in a long-term relationship, and the comfort and safety and everything else settles in, and the limerence and puppy dog love feelings fade, when they get a minute taste of the old feelings, they're done. They're off to the races.
It can be the case.
And it's a very addictive thing. And I will not give this up for anything. And they will put blinders on to the world around them. They will chase their drug, whether the drug is a literal drug or whether it's a affair or whatever it may be, some kind of destructive behavior, but it makes them feel alive again. That's everything.
And the thing about one of the real privileges about my job is that I am able to talk to people about their real thoughts and feelings. And I'm like thousands of people's secret keeper. Like I know really what's going on inside of a lot of people. They don't tell me the full unvarnished truth, of course, but they tell me more of the truth than maybe they tell anybody else in their lives. And I am at this point, there's a fundamental humility to being a therapist that tends to creep in, which is that you just learn not to judge people as harshly or at all, because like you can kind of understand where they're coming from. Like I can't tell you whether that woman who is tempted in that way by the promise of feeling alive again, whether she should leave or she should stay. But I can understand both decisions. And anybody who can't believe that she would do something is willfully avoiding trying to understand why that might be the case.
To empathize. God forbid we empathize with the,
Well, if I was the guy who was left for the homeless addict, let's be real, man, it would be hard for me to empathize with the woman. It would take a long time. It would take some years. I hear
from those men every day. And they do not want to try and understand why it happened. All they want to do is lay blame and to fix their pain, make their pain stop, basically, because they're traumatized.
And understood, man, it's not the time for understanding. It's the time to stop the bleeding. Like understanding sometimes comes later. Sometimes you have to run out of the burning house and then understand why it was set on fire. Like don't do it the other way around. That's stupid.